Jeff Scott Soto back in the house. You're on the road to rock. It's been too long. It's been a couple years. Jeff, welcome to the show, man. You're looking great as always, my friend. What's life
Thank
been
you.
like lately? Everything good?
Yeah, it's a continuation of everything that's kind of snowballed since the world reopened. We were all on hiatus for a while, and when we came back with a vengeance. And that's a beautiful thing about music and the people that support it is they were dying to see us and dying to hear us again. So it gave us that outlet to kind of just take off where we left off.
Well, before we get to some of the new exciting things that you have on the horizon here, I got to throw it back a little bit. Maybe it's because I'm a Kansas City guy. I'm a Chiefs fan that still not quite over Super Bowl 59, but you were here, Jeff, with TSO, Trans-Siberian Orchestra in Kansas City in December with the Mahomes jersey on. So we can't blame you for the Super Bowl loss. You were representing, man.
Well, let me there's a little backstory. I grew up being a massive Pittsburgh Steelers fan all my life.
Ah, wow.
Even more so. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles. I was never really following the Rams or the Raiders when they were here, etc. My son, who started following the Chiefs right around the time I was with Journey, when you guys had Trent Green, who was
Wow.
he was the promising new quarterback that got injured that season and basically career ended. But my son, for some reason, as a young man, he gravitated towards the Chiefs. They're losing, just terrible. All those years, some reason he saw something about this team, and his friends ridiculed him every Sunday, every year, every season, nonstop. They would just, until Patrick came into the fold. Then all of a sudden, everything shifted. They became the superstar championship team. Of course, I supported my son because he supported the Chiefs. But now, I mean, how can you not? Now I'm a bona fide Chiefs fan because my son supported the Chiefs. It was out of solidarity through him, and I became such a massive fan. I love the people. I love playing there with TSO, and now, of course, I love the team.
I am grateful to have you as a part of Chiefs Kingdom here. And that's so cool that your son, I thought when you said, oh, when Patrick Mahomes came on the scene, my son I was like, no, he came on the scene back in 2006 when Trent Green was here. That's
Yes.
crazy. And they say that patience sometimes gets rewarded.
Absolutely.
So us Chiefs fans have had that now. Super Bowl 59 did not quite fit into that category, but I'm not a greedy person. I wanted that one for Mahomes and for his legacy.
Yeah,
I, as a fan, 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, you can't really.
Exactly. And
But
I wanted it mainly. I mean, of course, everybody's kind of quieted down. They were blaming the refs. They were blaming all the why the Chiefs were winning when they weren't even having the greatest season. So at least now they kind of snuffed that. But I wanted them to win because I wanted them to be the first ever and probably the only in a very long time to come to have done 3 in a row. That's very common with basketball and other sports, but obviously never being done in NFL for as long as it's been out there. It would have been amazing. And then they could have just lost or kind of disintegrated along the way. But I wanted them to just have that glory.
right.
And unfortunately, they didn't get it.
Well, what about your Steelers? Is Aaron Rodgers going to be the guy? Are they going to get Aaron Rodgers? Is that what's going to happen?
I just don't get me started on that. The whole Aaron Rodgers thing is, he's gone through so many turmoils and things since the early days, since he was the superstar. And I really don't know. I don't know if he could be what LeBron did for the Lakers to the Steelers or any other team at this point. I don't know.
We'll see. That's going to be interesting. Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches in the league. He's always, no losing seasons in Pittsburgh, but seems like they've kind of gotten to a point where they've got to take another step, whether it be a quarterback, something that gets them to because the Chiefs are so good. The Bengals are right there in their division. The Ravens, that division's so tough. And it's just going to be it. But that's what we tuned in for, to hear a sports segment with Jeff and I. I'm glad we were. How about it?
And that's the thing. Yeah, we can wrap this up. I've always been one that really saw the efforts of the coaches and gave credit to the coaches, because obviously you have your superstars, you have your great teams, your great lineups, but in history, especially even when you go back to some of the amazing coaches that had the most winningest seasons of any sport, really, that to me is more to admire. I mean, Andy Reid and Tomlin, to me, are just the guys now. They're the guys that will go in history. You had your Belichick's, you had your through the ages, even what Dallas Cowboys guy lost the
Tom Landry and
Landry. You remember those names because of what they did with those teams, the superstar teams. But the coaches truly get a massive amount of credit because they're the reason why those teams got there. You can have the talent, but if you don't have somebody that's kind of guiding and making sure all the pieces fit, yeah, that's it all has to happen all together.
that's tremendous and well said. And I can't wait to see that. We've got the draft coming up. The season will be back before we know it. So for you, Jeff, I think, did you just get off the Monsters of Rock cruise? Are you just getting home? What's going on? You had a lot of cool pictures, and we got to get to some of this and just some of your experiences from another legendary cruise, it looked like.
Yeah, I just got home on Saturday night, and then on Sunday I had to go, of course, support my buddies in the band Eclipse because they played in Hollywood, their first LA show ever.
That's awesome.
And I was so exhausted. It's kind of like when you go to the NAMM show in LA, that everybody calls it at the end. They call it, you have NAMthrax because you're just like, oh, I'm just so wiped out. I didn't want to go, but every time I played in Sweden, those guys, they never let me down. They come and support. They come to the shows. So I didn't want to let them down. And I'm glad I went because they had a great show, great turnout. And it's just so great to see my friends and my peers, moving up the next generation of music and rock. It's moving on up, and it's great to see, and I'm just so happy and thrilled for them.
Well, you had a couple pictures here with two of my favorite guitarists of all time, kind of from the different spectrums here of life in some ways. Michael Schenker, one of my favorites of all time, man. I love that guy. I love everything that he's done. I love MSG. I love it mostly when Macaulay's the singer in Macaulay Schenker Group. And then the mean man himself, Chris Holmes. I'm the biggest Wasp fan you'll ever meet. So this is one of those moments. I'm like, yeah, I saw them on this tour. Obviously, Chris Holmes not in the band anymore, but looked like he had a great performance there. So that seems what a lot of this is like, just the camaraderie between all these connective tissue and tentacles to all these different bands. Sure. And that's what's got to be cool for you as a musician to see some of these guys.
For me, of course, as a fan, it gives me the opportunity to see some of the bands that I don't normally get to see. Maybe they're not playing in LA or near or close enough for me to go see, or I'm out of town when they play. So it gives me that chance and opportunity to kind of catch up and watch the shows that I missed or wanted to see. But the most important part is like you said, the camaraderie. I get to actually see these people in person and break bread with them. We had dinner with the guys from Extreme and hanging out with Winger backstage, and you get that extended personal time with them that you don't normally get on a regular life basis, unless they live down the street from you and you can, go have coffee or something, which is just never happens anymore. So that's one of the things I really love about that particular event, the cruise itself, is that I just get to catch up with so many friends and colleagues and even meet some that I haven't, worked with or met in the past. And Schenker is one of those. I met him once in 2010, shortly after I did the vocals for Dr. Doctor on his first tribute album, a Schenker tribute album that he played on. And I did Dr. Doctor on that. I met him backstage at a festival in England, and he said, and literally I'm dressed in shorts and wasn't stage worthy yet. You got to come up and sing with me. So of course, who's going to turn down Schenker? And it was the same thing on the boat. Just recently did a song for another album that he's got out right now currently, and it was a last minute call and say, hey Jeff, you're on the boat, would you like to do Lights Out with us tonight? Of course.
Yeah, I saw that clip, and I know Eric Kronwall is going to be singing for him too. Like when it comes to mind, like you and Eric are two of my favorite singers. So like, that's just kind of works when it comes
Eric's
to
I've been a fan of Eric since I saw him running through the audience singing Run Through the Hills on Swedish Idol.
Right. I saw that. Yes.
I became an instant fan. And then of course the band Heat, I've known those guys. I knew them when Kenny was the original singer, when Kenny was gone. And Eric took over. I was like, Jesus, it took it to another level. Now Kenny's back, and another level's been taken over. So
I love that. What is it about Swedish bands? What is it?
I don't get it. The level of talent is just stupendous out there. I don't know if it's because it's always so cold. They just want to sit in their rooms and practice. But man, the level of musicianship that comes out of Sweden is astonishing.
Because you obviously, Eclipse, who you just talked about, who they've had like 2 new albums out here in the last year and a half, both amazing. I love Eclipse so much. Heat, Crazy Licks is one of my favorites. I don't know if you know them. Amazing. They're going to be on the cruise next year.
How we streamlined the conversation to now start talking about W.E.T, right?
Exactly. Because the guys from Eclipse, you were in a band with them, and there's a new W.E.T album, and it's called Apex. and it's coming out here on March 28th. And I'm so excited for it. And it seems like anytime, and this is a testament to you guys, anytime that there's a buzz around a new Wet album, the internet just kind of lights up all in a positive way. There's not a lot of hate when it comes to this because people know what you're going to get from the melodic hard rock album that you guys have definitely delivered. Again, man, I got to say, I've listened to it. Chef's kiss on this new one. This is all good. So a lot of excitement.
The difference between how we approach Wet and the new albums and the new songs is it's very much the same way as Sons of Apollo was. We find that window of when we're all free, that we can all gather and put our eggs in the same basket and get an album done. But more importantly, it gives us a chance, the years that are in between the albums, it gives us a chance to kind of do the things that we're doing, that we might be pulling new influences, new resources that we can utilize in new Wet songs. And we also know that there's we kind of have a steady crowd, a steady following with Wet. There's a lot of my fans, a lot of Eclipse fans, etc.
Mhm.
But we have just Wet fans. There are some Wet fans that don't listen to my stuff or Eclipse. They just like Wet. So from that, we know what the album that we need to deliver every time to those people. We don't try to go in and reinvent the wheel. We don't try to change or let's try a new Mexican polka waltz.
Well,
we're not going to try to make a night at the opera. It's something that's just like, where did this come from? We know with Wet, we want to give the people what they want, but we also want to make it something that we would listen to ourselves, and that's the mindset we always use for making new Wet albums.
what does it say about you guys as a collective that you're on your 5th studio album 15 years later, and that people are clamoring for this, and that it's become such a, it's for Frontiers, a flagship, band that when you guys come out with something, that there's such this fervor for it. I mean, that says so much about you guys and what you've done individually and together, that there's such a hunger for this band. I mean, that's got to feel good.
Well, anytime I get praise or I get praise on behalf of the band, I really have to kind of put the brakes on and point a lot of that towards Eric Martinson. He truly is the overseer entirely since day one, in terms of gathering the songs, writing the songs, or gathering the songwriters, demoing the songs, making sure he sings everything. He has the lyrics written, the ones that I'm not actually contributing on. Everything is done basically through and via him. He mixes the album. Everything is overseen by Eric Martin. So he gets a lot of the overall, I guess, praise. And when he sends me a song that I have nothing to do with as far as the writing or the creativity part of it, I make sure I put my stamp on it. So in the end, when you listen back, it sounds like something I could have collaborated on. I could have actually been a part of. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things that he comes up with I wouldn't normally think about, which is great because now I've got a new influence in my arsenal to take to somewhere else that I wouldn't normally have had I not, done something that he co-wrote.
Well,
I like to create it. And I'm not comparing myself at all, not even the slightest. But when you think of Queen, for instance, Freddie Mercury was singing songs written by John Deacon, written songs by Brian May, entirely from those individuals. But when you heard Freddie sing them, the conviction and the care that he puts into those songs, he made it sound to everybody like he actually was part of that creativity. That's what I try to do with everything that I do, especially with Wet. When you're giving me a song that I had nothing to do with the writing, I want to make sure it sounds like I did have something to do with it in the end. I wanted to sound that authentic in terms of my creativity, my input.
We'll talk a little bit about the song and the video for the latest single you guys just came out with, which is "This House Is on Fire." I think it's, I gotta say, it's got to be in my top 3 Wet songs that you guys have ever done. I think that this song, as I'm looking at the comments right now on YouTube, a lot of people agreeing, saying the same things. Like a lot of just so many great comments. This combination never disappoints. Love everything they have done. Great song. Fasten your seatbelts. Wet is back. Here's just some of the comments on the YouTube. I mean, all positive. And this song in particular, it delivers that hard driving nature, the melodic sensibilities that fans are used to, and the video really cool too. So this is, like, I guess, you guys' 3rd single for this, and this one really seems to be kind of a popular one here.
Well, it's funny because that song was not on the original. It wasn't even slated to be on the record.
Wow.
And one of the positives that came from a negative that basically was there was a massive delay on the album being released. Labels have to deal with schedules and time frames based on when they're releasing things. It's all calculated. It's like moving chess pieces. You have to do it in a particular way. And when we did finally deliver the album, it wasn't on time to meet a certain release schedule, so they moved it. Them moving it forced us to not go back and listen and say we're missing something, but this one particular item came up last minute. It was on the 11th hour. The album was mixed, the album was submitted, everything was already done. And then Eric's, hold the phone. I just wrote this song and co-wrote this song. This has to be on the record. This has to be on the record. He was really insistent. We heard it. We go, yeah, it's a strong song. It should be on the record. We had no idea it was going to resonate as one of the best songs on the record, if not one of the best songs from W.E.T, because we had that positivity that came from the negative side of the album being extended in terms of, or delayed rather.
We'll talk about Eric as a producer. I think that he is so polished, and I think that's what stands out about Eclipse albums. That's what stands out about this, is you kind of know what you're getting. You almost take it for granted. It's so good,
Yeah.
kind of like Mutt Lange's stuff in the 80s, where you're just used to this perfection, crystal clear, everything's right. So just talk about him in that aspect. He's so good at that.
He's come a long way. I mean, it's funny because I still think the first album sounds great, which he had a lot to do with the mixing and everything, the production, the overall wrangling of everything. He was very much involved, just the same as he still is. But he kicks himself now. He goes, oh man, if I could remix that album with the technology and the knowledge I have now, and I listen to it, I go, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing needed to change on the first record. But that's just his normal way of always wanting to get better and always wanting to progress and utilizing technology at its finest and its fullest. And from that, he's become such a master engineer. He's great on both sides of the fence, whether he's on the production and mixing and engineer studio side of things, as well as the songwriting and the creativity side of the actual songs themselves.
We'll just talk about the relationship with Frontiers, because there's such a hunger for this type of music, and that's why Frontiers is able to put together so many amazing super groups and so many amazing albums, and they feed that beast so well. There's that word.
We were the first that came about that whole idea of taking different different entities, different artists from different bands, and putting them together and see what resonates, or if anything does resonate. And because it was so successful, obviously this was W.E.T is a product of the label. This is something that they put together. They own the rights. They own the whole idea of it together. And so it's just our job to make sure that people like it and they like it just the same.
And I'm so thankful, just as a music fan, that Frontiers has done, because 9 times out of 10, when something crosses my desk and I get an email, it's a Frontiers related project, like, I'm going to check it out. If I have no clue what it is, I'm going to and I'm like, gosh, dang it, that's infectious. It's always something. It's maybe a band I've never heard of in my life. And they have a formula down. They get it. They get what people want. And I think that melodic hard rock is something that will always, oriented rock is something that's always going to resonate with people.
They know their audience, and they certainly know they know they need to deliver it. They know they need to continue delivering it the way it's expected. As you just said, when it comes across your table and it has that logo, that emblem on it, it's going to be of a certain level and quality, because that's exactly what they're all about.
Just kind of overarching theme here, your level of happiness in what you're doing these days. You've done so much. Sons of Apollo, tremendous, obviously, on through the years, and all various projects that you've done, Soto and Axel Rudy Pell back in the day, I'm a huge fan of. But like, at this stage of your life, do you feel like that you're as in control as you've ever been, and that you feel like creatively that you're right where you want to be? Or is it just kind of always evolving and always wanting more, bigger, better?
No, I'm finally in control. That is the key line. Back in the day, I wasn't in control because not enough people knew of me, or my peers didn't know of me, and I was still trying to climb up that ladder, and I never really got even to the middle of the ladder. I'm not a household name by any stretch. I've always wanted to be where everybody knew me, like they knew David Lee Roth or Paul Stanley or Ozzy Osbourne. I wanted to have that household name behind me, because obviously that's a security that just guarantees you'll always be able to do stuff into the future. So my only guarantee was my personal ambition, my personal hunger, and wanting to be creative, wanting to continue to be a creative force in music, and as well expand and experience things that I haven't done yet. That to me was the key. That was the key to longevity. So I've done so many different projects, different things here and there and everywhere, but some of it was out of necessity. But now because it seems to have kind of carved my path of where I can actually take it now. I can actually pick and choose. I can do things because I want to do them, not because I have to. Let's put it that way.
And you're a guy that has tentacles dating back into the 80s, but you're one of the young guys on the other side of it. You're one of the young ones.
I'm one of the young ones, and I'll be 60 this year, which is crazy.
That's that's what I mean though. And it's been a harsh reality in some ways over the last, 10 years, really. I think back because I was in LA like right after Lemmy died. And I always mark that as the point when like my heroes started to fall rapidly after that. And so,
Exactly.
And Dio, that had been, a few years before. And not only just people passing away, but in the last 5 years, we've gotten, or the last Kiss show has happened. Aerosmith's retired.
Right.
Eddie Van Halen's died. Like, it's just like, and so to be, it's still in that mix and still part of that. Like, what's that like for you? Like, just as someone that has lost so many heroes, but yet you're still right there. And one of the young ones, like we said.
Well, I'm beyond grateful for starters. And again, it all harkens what I just already said in terms that I'm lucky and I'm honored and humbled that I still can do what I'm doing. Again, not in the household name level, but just in the fact that there's enough demand, there is enough interest, especially from fans, but more so from peers and colleagues in the industry to keep me moving forward, to keep me working. Because the last thing I want to do is rest on my laurels. The last thing I want to do is just tour and do shows based on the things I've already done. I still have a lot in me I want to do. If nobody buys it, it's not, I really don't care about that. I have to do it because for me, it's like breathing or sleeping. You have to do it. It's part of it's innate behavior. I have to create. I have to be part of something that's still churning out something new. Otherwise, I would just feel stagnant and just, I probably wouldn't even be interested in doing the old stuff anymore if that's what it became.
Do you feel like that with W.E.T's popularity that, and I interview a lot of artists that do Frontiers projects, and it's always kind of the same answer, which is, oh yeah, we'd love to do some shows as Black Swan or some of these other bands, but we're all in other bands, we all have this scheduling. But W.E.T is one of those that I feel like that could do some touring. Like, what?
Unfortunately, and I'm gonna take the hit on that one. Unfortunately, we have been offered some great stuff, some tours or single shows or whatever, and it really falls on my lap because W.E.T kind of started. It started within the reality of where my voice lied back when I was in my 30s and 40s, and when I was still young enough to be able to nail all that stuff live. That's when W.E.T was created. As we continue to make records, instead of maybe we should bring it down a little bit because someday we might have to do this on stage, we kind of kept it there. And so if you put together a W.E.T set that I had to sing night after night, I probably wouldn't get to the first week before I'd have to be sent home with no voice. And that's the unfortunate side of this band, but it's also the harsh reality. I'm not going to go out and either mime to tracks because I can't hit the notes, change the tuning and bring it down lower so it's barely recognizable as the song. If we can't do it the way it's supposed to be done, I'd rather not do it. And that's, I'd say 90% of the reason why W.E.T doesn't tour. And then you add all the other things like the scheduling, timing, blah, blah, blah. So I'm pretty much the reason why we don't. And I said it through the years. I said I wouldn't blame the guys if they got a singer where they could actually go out and take it on the road. But I think it works better that we kind of keep the mystique behind it in terms of a studio project, because then we can create the songs, craft them the way we want them to sound, as opposed to create them to be formatted for me to be able to pull off live. And that's the difference. In a studio, I can take 3 days to do one song. When you do it live, you have that 4 minutes to knock it out. And if it sucks, it's on YouTube forever. So there's a difference in the approach.
Well, I thought your guys' last album, Retransmission, was fantastic. I listen to that whole album constantly. Gotta Be About Love, one of my favorite songs you guys have done.
I agree. I love that
Big
song.
Boys Don't Cry is so good. And it's like, do you feel like because I think this one, it's a W.E.T album. It's got a formula to it that works, but I think this one maybe is even a little more, I don't know, a little darker, a little edgier maybe. Was that kind of on purpose? Is that something that you kind of wanted to build off of Retransmission, or just kind of did you start from scratch on this?
Yeah, it started from scratch really. And again, we don't necessarily write constantly during the time that we're
Right.
taking off when we're in between albums. We dive into the record based on, yeah, I'm sure Eric's got he's got songs that he's constantly writing and doesn't know who they're going to fit for. But overall, we go into each album as the album cycle is about to begin. So that way it's fresh, it's new, and it's not something that's been sitting in the shelves for 3 or 4 years and then we're just kind of dusting it off. Uh Aside of that, it's I like that we have the time off in between to be able to utilize whatever we've experienced or whatever we want to add that we wouldn't have been able to do that had we done year after year, one album next year, next year, next year. We have a chance to let it kind of simmer a little bit and then come back and reignite it.
Well, I can't put it over enough, guys. Again, it's a Apex is the name of the album from W.E.T. It's available right now to pre-order on via Frontier. So make sure you do that. It's coming up here at the time that this airs. It'll be just ready to come out. So we're right up on it. The release is here, and just all great things. Jeff, always been such a
Let me
huge
add
fan.
one more thing.
Of
One more thing
course.
that's really important that goes towards what you were saying about the album and the sound and the overall
Mhm.
production, everything. Having Jamie Borger, my drummer from Talisman, on board really, really changed the whole emphasis of the songs. And it's weird because when you listen to them, you don't really notice the difference between the drummers. I mean, it's not like Dream Theater. It's not like the difference
Sure.
between Mangini and Portnoy in terms of their intensity of as drummers. But there's a level of the approach on how the drums are done for the W.E.T. albums that you can tell the difference between the two different singers. And singers, I'm sorry, the two different
Drummers.
drummers.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, they didn't tell me this was happening. This was a big secret during the course of the tracking, because when I get the songs, they're demoed in Sweden, and Eric uses one of the drum apps that everybody uses for writing songs these days. So I get used to those versions of the songs, and then when I'm done with my vocals, then Eric's doing all the post production, doing the harmonies. That's when he's kind of filling in the voids, and then the drums are actually tracked, the real drums. So all I had as a reference were the versions that I sang my lead vocals to. And then all of a sudden, hey, Jeff, I'm sending you a folder with the mixes, the entire album's mix. Make notes if you want about certain things, if you want up or down or whatever. Within the first 3 songs, I'm going, these drums, this doesn't sound like Robin. This doesn't sound like his style. I don't know how I know his style because I'm basing it off just
Yeah.
records that were there in the past. I never really toured with the guy. I never really learned his style, but something seemed a little different. I wrote to Eric immediately. I said, is this Robin on drums? He goes, nope. And I'll give you 2 more guesses. As soon as he said that, my next guess was, it's got to be Jamie, because that's what it sounded like to me. And he said, bingo, we wanted to surprise you. He recorded the entire album. And man, I was so thrilled. And you can truly hear that Talisman energy between the two of us that we're injecting into this new W.E.T. album.
Pleasant surprise, and it's a good one, and it's such a good album. And Jeff, before we let you go, I got to hit you with our final 4 drum roll. 4 quick ones. We'll have some
Yes.
fun. You give us what comes to mind. Okay, first one. What is your favorite like unpopular music opinion? Mine is that Kiss is Crazy Nights is the best Kiss album. So that just to give you an example.
Oh boy. Oh boy. that's
Do you have
not
a good
one.
one like that?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a good one like that, or is mine too crazy? You can't think of one now that's like one of your unpopular ones.
I'm gonna say King Cobra's debut album, Ready to Strike, is probably one of the best albums in rock history. A lot of people don't know of it because they didn't get the attention that the Motley Crues and the Rats and those bands got back in the day. But that album, to this day, every single song just slays me. So
Shout
I'm gonna
out
go. It's one of
to
the best rock albums in history, and that's my
Mark
opinion.
Free, Mercy Free, shout out. Great stuff. Love that album. What was the first concert you ever attended?
Oh God, you ready for this? I
Yes.
think it was 1976. Was the Little River Band with Jim Messina was opening, and then the second concert was the Bee Gees at Dodger Stadium with Andy Gibb doing a few songs with them. That's the
Wow.
world I grew up. I started in pop. I started R&B, soul.
Yeah.
Never liked rock, and it wasn't until Journey came along, or Lou Gramm came along, or Bobby Kimball and Toto came along. All of a sudden, you had these soul singers. You can hear that they were so influenced by Temptations and Motown and all that.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
singing rock and like, ooh, now we're onto something, because that's my style of singing now under a rock blanket. Now all of a sudden, I like rock, and then it just got it went downhill from there. Then all the Dios and the Iron Maidens and the Judas Priests of the world just
And it
came
was
and just
over.
consumed me.
Well, that could transition perfectly into this one. So you might have another good answer for this. What's the first album you ever bought?
It was Jackson 5 ABC.
So another eclectic mix into that's yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Okay, this is a tough one. I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. You gotta replace one singer for one night. Living Dead, any band, any artist have ever lived. You've got one set with one band of all time. Who are you singing with?
That's the easiest answer in the world. It starts with a Q.
Yep,
I think you
Queen.
know who it is. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there it is. And I would love to see that. It could still happen.
It could, but I doubt it. But just the fact that I can actually, and I'm going to pat myself in the back. I try not to do it because it looks egotistical, but to be able to say that those guys are my friends, to say that they're on my Rolodex is a term we used to use. That we actually can text each other and keep in touch with each other. That to me alone is worth 1,000 shows with them. Just the fact that they're in my life as my friends, as my in my circle, as opposed to just me being a fan, which I still am and will always be. That to me is worth more than ever singing or performing with that band ever.
I love it, Jeff. Thank you so much for the time, my friend. The new W.E.T. album, Apex, it is tremendous. March 28th is the date. Follow him at Jeff Scott Soto. Pretty easy. Check it, find it, and W.E.T. is on Facebook. Follow him there. Thank you so much, Jeff. Always appreciate it, my friend. We'll see you out there.
Thank you, brother. All the best.